May 20, 1943, Berlin, Germany. Weapons Analysis Laboratory at Rheinmetall-Borsig. German engineers in white lab coats surrounded an examination table where lay an M2 Browning 50 caliber machine gun captured in Tunisia after the Afrika Korps collapse. Oberingenieur Klaus Hartmann, a weapons testing veteran with 20 years of experience, adjusted his glasses and examined the heavy American weapon with an expression mixing professional disdain and incredulity. The M2 weighed 38 kilograms, more than 3 times the weight of the German MG42. Its design dated from 1918, developed by John Moses Browning at the end of World War I. It was literally 25-year-old technology, while Germany produced the MG42, considered the most advanced machine gun in the world. The MG42 fired 1,200 rounds per minute versus 450 to 600 for the M2. It weighed only 11.5 kilograms versus the Americans' 38. It was transportable by one man while the M2 required a crew. The MG42's sound was so rapid that Allies called it Hitler's buzzsaw for sounding like tearing fabric, terrorizing troops who faced it. Hartmann made meticulous notes, cataloging each perceived deficiency. He turned to his assistants and delivered judgment that encapsulated German technical arrogance. This Browning M2 is a great war relic, primitive 1918 technology. Our MG42 fires at twice the speed, weighs 1/3 as much, and represents the future of mechanized warfare. Americans live in the technological past while we build the future. It's typical of them, using obsolete equipment instead of innovating. What Hartmann and German engineers didn't comprehend during superficial testing was that they were examining the most ubiquitous, reliable, and versatile weapon of World War II, a machine gun that would be literally everywhere, doing everything, surviving everything. The M2 Browning wasn't just a heavy machine gun, but the democratization of firepower through absolute reliability and industrial mass production. Between 1941 and 1945, the United States produced approximately 2 million 50 caliber machine guns of all variants, including 350,000 M2HB for ground use and hundreds of thousands of AN-M2 for aviation. Germany produced 400,000 MG42s. Ratio, 5-to-1. But the real disparity was vastly greater because the M2 was simultaneously on Sherman tanks, P-51 Mustang fighters, B-17 Flying Fortress bombers, warships, jeeps, and defensive positions. And in 2025, 92 years after adoption in 1933, the M2 Browning remains in active global service, the longest continuously used firearm in American military history. The obsolete relic of 1918 still kills enemies a century later, while the superior MG42 was retired decades ago. The mathematics of ubiquity was already being written, not in specific technical superiority, but in production volumes so vast it transformed the concept of firepower into ubiquitous operational reality. The United States produced approximately 2 million 50 caliber machine guns during World War II. Germany produced 400,000 MG42s. The 5-to-1 ratio didn't capture the real magnitude of disparity because the M2 wasn't just an infantry machine gun, but a universal weapon system installed on all military platforms simultaneously. Each B-17 Flying Fortress bomber mounted 13 M2s in multiple firing positions. Each B-24 Liberator had 10. The B-29 Superfortress carried 12. P-51 Mustang fighters had 6 M2s, P-47 Thunderbolts had 8. Multiplied by tens of thousands of aircraft, aviation armament alone put more than 500,000 M2s in the skies. Sherman tanks mounted M2s as commander's weapon. Armed jeeps transported M2s on improvised mounts. Warships had dozens for anti-aircraft defense. Ground defensive positions used M2s on tripods. The versatility was unprecedented in weapons history. The same M2 firing from a tank in the morning was identical to one installed in a bomber in the afternoon and mounted on a ship at night. Total component interchangeability meant replacement parts worked in any M2, regardless of platform or variant. This standardization eliminated logistical bottlenecks that tormented Axis forces operating dozens of different weapon types with incompatible parts. Germany produced excellent weapons, but each required specific supplies, specific training, specific maintenance. America produced the M2 that did everything. Longevity revealed another dimension of superiority. The M2 was officially adopted in 1933 and remains in active military service in 2025. 92 years of continuous use. It participated in literally all American conflicts since adoption: World War II, Korean War, Vietnam, Falklands War, Gulf War, Iraq, Afghanistan, and current operations. It's the longest continuously used firearm in American military history, surpassing even the M1911 pistol, also designed by Browning. Soldiers who operated M2s in Afghanistan in 2021 used weapons functionally identical to those their grandfathers operated in Normandy in 1944. The German MG42, technically superior, was replaced by modern designs decades ago. The M2 continues as NATO standard and remains in active production 77 years after World War II ended. Strategic impact was measurable with devastating precision. German soldiers and pilots didn't face the M2 occasionally but constantly, on all platforms in all theaters with no escape. Luftwaffe pilots attacking bomber formations flew against storms of .50 caliber fire from dozens of aircraft simultaneously. German infantry was suppressed by M2s from Sherman tanks, jeeps, and defensive positions. Surfacing U-boats were targeted by M2s from escort ships. There was no front, battle, or theater where the M2 wasn't present in overwhelming mass. Ubiquity created psychological sensation of inevitability. No matter where Germans fought, they faced the same weapon functioning perfectly. John Moses Browning, history's most prolific and influential firearms designer, developed the M2 between 1918 and 1921, refining the heavy machine gun concept he'd begun during World War I. Browning died in 1926 at his workbench at FN Herstal factory in Belgium, but left a legacy of designs that would dominate 20th century armaments. The M2 represented culmination of his engineering philosophy: robust simplicity, absolute reliability, and universal adaptability. The .50 BMG cartridge was developed specifically for the weapon, capable of penetrating 23 millimeters of steel armor at 200 meters, destroying lightly armored vehicles, downing aircraft, and suppressing infantry at distances exceeding 1,800 meters. Genius didn't reside in radical innovation, but in perfect execution of established principles. The M2 operated by short recoil, a system where barrel and bolt recoiled locked together briefly before separating for reload cycle. It had only 64 main parts, a remarkably low number for a weapon of such capability. Each component was designed for total interchangeability, meaning any part from any M2 worked in any other M2. This standardization eliminated logistical nightmares of incompatible versions and drastically simplified training, maintenance, and field repair. During World War II, M2 production was distributed across practically the entire American industrial base. Manufacturers included AC Spark Plug Division of General Motors, Frigidaire, Guide Lamp Division, Saginaw Steering Gear, Buffalo Arms Corporation, Kelsey Hayes Wheel Company, and High Standard Manufacturing Company, among dozens of others. This production dispersal through multiple civilian contractors applied American industrial philosophy of distributed production that made the system immune to concentrated bombing that destroyed centralized German factories. Germany had excellent armaments factories, but when Allied bombers destroyed them, production collapsed. America had hundreds of factories producing M2s. Destroying some didn't significantly affect total production. At peak production in 1944, America produced approximately 45,000 .50 caliber machine guns per month, more than all German MG42 production in an entire year. American production engineers applied automotive manufacturing techniques to armaments production, reducing barrel rifling time by half, using special broaches developed specifically for the process. Assembly lines moved components through specialized stations where workers executed repetitive tasks with growing efficiency as experience accumulated. Germany still operated essentially artisanal methods at industrial scale. each weapon receiving individual attention from skilled armorers. America completely industrialized the process, applying Henry Ford's principles to armaments. The M2's versatility manifested in multiple variants optimized for different platforms, but maintaining essential interchangeability. M2HB, heavy barrel, was the standard ground version with heavy barrel to prevent overheating during sustained fire. It weighed 38 kilograms but could fire indefinitely with periodic barrel changes. M2 was the aerial version with lighter barrel, an increased rate of fire to 750-850 rounds per minute, cooled by airflow at altitude. M3 appeared late in the war with fire rate exceeding 1,200 rounds per minute for aerial combat. Each variant was optimized for specific role but shared 80% of components with others, maintaining logistical advantages. Aviation armament revealed the true scale of ubiquity. Each B-17 Flying Fortress heavy bomber mounted 13 50 caliber machine guns in 5 positions, 2 in nose turret, 2 in dorsal turret, 2 in tail turret, 2 in waist position on each side, 2 in belly turret, and 1 cheek mount. America produced 12,731 B-17s, meaning 165 and 503 M2s in just this aircraft. B-24 Liberator had 10 M2s, multiplied by 18,482 aircraft equals 184,020 M2s. B-29 Superfortress carried 12, multiplied by 3,170 aircraft equals 47,640 M2s. Just 3 heavy bomber types represented nearly 400,000 installed M2s. Fighters were equally dependent on 50 caliber firepower. P-51 Mustang, considered by many the war's best fighter, mounted 6 M2s, 3 in each wing. America produced 15,586 Mustangs, representing 93,516 M2s. P-47 Thunderbolt, 8th Air Force workhorse, carried 8 M2s and was produced in 15,636 units, totaling 125,088 M2s. P-38 Lightning had 4 M2s plus 1 20mm cannon, multiplied by 10,037 aircraft equals 40,148 M2s. Fighter armament alone represented more than 250,000 M2s. When German pilots attacked escorted bomber formations, they flew against literally hundreds of M2s firing simultaneously, creating curtains of .50 caliber fire that made survival a matter of luck more than skill. January 26, 1945. Holtzwihr, France. Second Lieutenant Audie Murphy, 19 years old, commanded Company B of the 15th Infantry Regiment of the 3rd Infantry Division during operations to eliminate the Colmar Pocket. A German force of approximately 250 infantry soldiers supported by 6 tanks emerged from Holtzwihr for counterattack. Murphy's company, reduced by casualties, disease, and injuries from original strength of 235 men to just 18, was dangerously outnumbered. Murphy, being the only remaining officer, had assumed company command. Watching Germans advancing across snow-covered field, Murphy realized position would be overrun unless he did something drastic. Germans directly hit an American M10 tank destroyer, setting it ablaze and forcing crew to abandon vehicle. Murphy ordered his men to withdraw to forest positions while remaining alone at his post firing M1 carbine and relaying artillery orders via telephone, while Germans concentrated fire directly on his position. Then Murphy mounted the abandoned, burning M10 and began firing the 50 caliber machine gun, mounted on top, against advancing German infantry. It was literally standing on top of a time bomb, exposed to enemy fire from ankles to head, silhouetted against trees and snow behind him. German platoon crawling through ditch toward him was completely eliminated by precise M2 fire. For more than an hour, Murphy remained atop the burning M10 firing the M2 against successive waves of German infantry. He was wounded in the leg but continued firing, directing artillery fire on his own position via field telephone, while simultaneously operating the machine gun. Germans, unable to determine exactly where Murphy was firing from due to confusion and smoke, became disorganized. American fighter bombers found break in clouds over battlefield and attacked, adding aerial fire to the hell Murphy was creating. Estimates indicate Murphy killed or wounded more than 50 German soldiers alone with the M2 before running out of ammunition. Then he climbed down, reorganized his men, and led counterattack that recaptured position. He received Medal of Honor for this action, and became the most decorated American soldier of World War II. The vignette demonstrated the M2's incomparable sustained lethality. One man with one machine gun stopped an entire company because the weapon simply didn't stop functioning under any conditions. Captured German pilots regularly reported specific terror of facing .50 caliber fire from bomber formations. Interrogations preserved in archives reveal consistent pattern of recognition. Messerschmitt Me-109 pilot captured in 1944 declared, "Attacking B-17 formation is flying directly into metal storm. 13 .50 caliber machine guns per bomber, multiplied by 12 or 20 aircraft in formation, means more than 150 to 250 barrels firing simultaneously. There's no way to avoid being hit eventually. And the damn American machine guns never jam, never fail. Our MG-131 and MG-151 fail regularly under extreme cold or after prolonged fire. American M2 fires indefinitely." Another Focke-Wulf FW-190 pilot admitted, "We knew any frontal attack against B-17 was essentially suicide. Nose had 2 .50 caliber in turret, plus cheek positions. Approaching frontally meant flying against 6 to 8 concentrated machine guns. We tried attacking from below or behind, but dorsal and belly turrets had more 50s. There was no safe angle." German ground troops reports described similar desperation when facing M2s mounted on tanks or defensive positions. Captured Wehrmacht document from 1944 admitted with brutal candor, "American .50 caliber machine guns are ubiquitous and devastating. When Sherman tank appears, first thing we observe is tracer fire from .50 caliber mounted on top, operated by commander. Effective range exceeding 1,000 meters means we cannot approach with personal weapons before being suppressed or killed. Panzerfausts require approach to 60 meters, but .50 caliber prevents any movement within 800+ meter kill zone. American defensive positions mount M2s on tripods that completely dominate fields of fire. Our MG-42s are superior in rate of fire, but American M2 exceeds in range, penetration, and crucially, absolute reliability under all conditions. Reliability was legendary and verifiable through extensive testing. M2 operated in temperatures from 40 degrees Celsius in Arctic to plus 150 degrees Celsius in North African desert without modifications. It functioned in mud, sand, marine salt water, snow and ice with minimal maintenance. Failure rate was below 1% even after 100,000 rounds, an astronomical number exceeding wartime lifespan of most weapons. Soldiers consistently reported M2 simply didn't stop working. When it jammed, it was usually due to defective ammunition, not mechanical weapon failure. This absolute reliability meant soldiers completely trusted the weapon, knowing it would work when needed, eliminating psychological variable of doubt that affected users of less reliable weapons. August 18, 1945, 3 days after Japanese surrender. 2 B-32 Dominator bombers on photo reconnaissance mission over Tokyo Bay were attacked by 17 Japanese fighters in violation of ceasefire. During 2-hour aerial engagement, B-32 gunners fired more than 4,000 rounds of M2 .50 caliber from their multiple turrets. Each B-32 mounted 10 M2s in Sperry A-17 nose and tail turrets, pair of Martin A-3FA dorsal turrets behind cockpit, and Sperry A-13A belly turret. Through 10 separate attack passes, Japanese fighters strafed large American bombers that responded with M2s, firing massive volume of .50 caliber ammunition. One B-32 suffered multiple hits that damaged aircraft and fatally wounded Sergeant Anthony J. Marchiano, 20 years old. He was last American killed by enemy action during World War II. But the M2s continued firing, repelling Japanese attack and allowing both bombers to return to base at Okinawa. Last bullets fired by American forces in World War II were from M2 Browning .50 caliber machine guns, appropriate for weapon that was literally in every battle, in every theater, on every platform, from first shot at Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, to last shot over Tokyo on August 18, 1945. No other American weapon, no weapon of any nation could make that claim. May 8, 1945. Victory in Europe Day. Kummersdorf, Germany, location of Wehrmacht's main weapons proving ground. Oberingenieur Klaus Hartmann, same engineer who had examined captured M2 in May 1943, sat in chaotic office surrounded by technical reports accumulated during 2 years of exhaustive testing, while Reich completely collapsed around him. Distant explosions of Soviet artillery echoed. Smoke from burning Berlin obscured horizon. Hartmann ignored chaos, focused on completing final analysis report on M2 Browning that had consumed last years of his career. Irony wasn't lost on him. He was documenting enemy weapon superiority while nation he served disintegrated. 2 years of testing revealed truth that initial superficial 1943 analysis hadn't captured. M2 wasn't technically superior to MG42 in pure rate of fire or weight. MG42 fired 1,200 rounds per minute versus M2HB grounds 485-635. MG42 weighed 11.5 kilograms versus M2's 38. In specific specifications, MG42 seemed objectively superior, but extensive operational testing revealed specific specifications were completely irrelevant to real operational effectiveness. M2 functioned in extreme temperatures from 40 degrees to plus 150 degrees without modifications. It operated in mud, sand, salt water, snow, ice, and dust without significant failures. Failure rate remained below 1% even after firing 100,000 rounds, a number exceeding wartime operational lifespan of any weapon. MG42, despite impressive specifications, was notoriously sensitive to adverse environmental conditions and required frequent careful maintenance to maintain reliability. But truly devastating disparity wasn't in reliability, but in universal ubiquity. Field reports from all theaters showed identical pattern. German soldiers faced M2s on Sherman tanks, P-51 and P-47 fighters, B-17 and B-24 bombers, armed jeeps, ground defensive positions, and warships, frequently all simultaneously in same battle. There was no front where M2 wasn't present. No battle where German soldiers didn't face multiple M2s from multiple platforms. Luftwaffe pilots reported attacking bomber formation meant flying against more than 150. 50 caliber machine guns firing simultaneously. Infantry reported approaching Sherman tanks was impossible due to commanders M2 dominating 800-plus meter kill zone. Surfacing U-boats were targeted by M2s from naval escorts. Hartmann wrote in final report, words preserved in archives captured by allies. I now understand fundamental error of our initial evaluation. We analyzed M2 Browning as individual weapon and concluded MG42 was technically superior in rate of fire and tactical mobility. This analysis was correct but completely irrelevant. Americans didn't create individual weapon. They created universal firepower system that transcends conventional armament categories. Same M2 firing from Sherman tank in morning is functionally identical to one firing from P-51 fighter in afternoon and destroyer naval at night. Total component interchangeability means replacement part from any M2 works in any other M2, regardless of platform or variant. This standardization eliminates logistical bottlenecks that torment our fragmented weapon system. Hartmann continued, recognition becoming more devastating with each paragraph. American mass production of approximately 2 million 50 caliber machine guns versus our production of 400,000 MG42s reveals disparity not just numerical, but philosophical. They applied automotive manufacturing principles to armaments, distributing production through hundreds of converted civilian factories. When we bombed one factory, 9 others continued producing. Our centralized system was efficient in theory but vulnerable in practice. When Allied bombers destroyed our main factories, production collapsed. American system was robust through distributive redundancy. They didn't make better machine gun. They made machine gun that does everything, goes everywhere, never breaks, exists in millions of units, and can be produced by any factory with basic industrial capacity. Psychological conclusion penetrated beyond technical analysis to philosophical understanding about nature of industrial warfare. This isn't merely superior engineering. It's fundamentally different industrial philosophy that makes our pursuit of specific technical superiority completely irrelevant. MG42 is better machine gun in narrow technical sense. M2 Browning is better weapon system in every meaningful operational sense. Design longevity from 1918 isn't weakness but strength. Demonstrates it was made right first time and doesn't require modification. Our constant pursuit of superior designs results in logistical fragmentation, multiplied training, and unsustainable complexity. They created one weapon and produced it at scale that makes individual quality strategically irrelevant. When soldier faces one M2, he can defeat it with luck and tactics. When facing 10 M2s simultaneously from multiple directions on multiple platforms, defeat is mathematical, not matter of skill or courage. Final statistics were overwhelming in totality and unequivocal in verdict on weapons warfare. United States produced approximately 2 million .50 caliber machine guns of all variants during World War II, including 350,000 M2HB heavy barrel for ground use and hundreds of thousands of AN-M2 for aerial armament. Germany produced 400,000 MG42s. 5-to-1 ratio didn't capture real disparity because M2s were on all platforms simultaneously, while MG42s were limited to ground use. M2 remains in active military service in 2025, 92 years after 1933 adoption, absolute record for any firearm in American military history. Reliability rate below 1% failures even after 100,000 rounds demonstrated incomparable robust design. Conflicts served include World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Falklands, Gulf War, Iraq, Afghanistan, and current operations. M2 is still produced and used globally in 2025 by more than 100 countries. No other World War II weapon remains in standard military service. General George S. Patton, 3rd Army commander known for frank opinions on armaments, declared in 1945, M2 Browning .50 caliber is simply most effective machine gun ever created. Not because it's faster or lighter than alternatives, but because it works always, anywhere, under any imaginable condition, and does literally everything you need heavy machine gun to do. I saw M2s operating in Ardennes snow, North African desert heat, France mud, and every environment between. They never failed. That reliability is worth more than any specification on paper. This assessment from field commander who depended on weapons functioning perfectly under combat pressure carried weight of real operational experience versus theoretical analysis. Barrett Tillman, military historian specializing in World War II armaments, wrote in Post-War Analysis, "If we ask what was most important weapon of World War II, controversial but defensible answer is M2 Browning .50 caliber. It didn't win individual battles dramatically like atomic bomb. It had no single decisive moment like decoded enigma. But it was in every battle, every day, everywhere, on every platform, from first shot fired at Pearl Harbor to last bullets over Tokyo. No other weapon of any combatant nation can make that claim of universal ubiquity. M2 was so fundamental to American war effort it became invisible through ubiquity. This assessment captured paradox of weapons so common it rarely received specific recognition despite massive impact. Legacy transcended numbers and statistics to establish fundamental armament design principles that remain valid. M2 Browning permanently proved that in modern industrial warfare, longevity through robust design, plus universal versatility, plus absolute mass production, surpasses specialized technical superiority in specific metrics. German MG42 was better in rate of fire and weight, but was retired and replaced by modern designs decades ago. M2, obsolete and antiquated according to 1943 German analysis, continues killing enemies in 2025, 92 years after adoption. It's mounted on Humvee vehicles, AH-64 Apache helicopters, modern Arleigh Burke-class warships, and defensive positions globally. It was used by more than 100 countries on 6 continents. American soldiers who used M2 in Afghanistan during 2021 withdrawal operated weapon fundamentally identical to one grandfather's operated in Normandy in June 1944, grandfathers in Korean War in 1950, fathers in Vietnam in 1968, and brothers in Iraq in 2003. This continuity through 4 generations of combatants demonstrated design so fundamentally correct it doesn't require replacement. Modifications over decades were minimal. Improvements in materials using modern steels. Adjustments in feed systems. Addition of Picatinny rails for modern optics. But essential mechanism remains unchanged since Browning's original design. Lesson was profound and applicable beyond specific armaments. Best tool isn't necessarily most technically advanced, but one that functions perfectly, does everything you need, operates under all conditions, and never needs replacement because it was made right first time. John Moses Browning, dead in 1926 at age 71, created weapons still defending American soldiers nearly a century after his death. This immortality through perfect engineering represents pinnacle of designer achievement. Creating something so fundamentally correct, it transcends generations and remains relevant regardless of subsequent technological advances. Germany lost World War II for multiple strategic, economic, and military factors. But at level of individual armaments, fundamental error was pursuing specific technical superiority through specialized designs while America pursued universal sufficiency through robust designs mass-produced. MG-42 was superior machine gun in laboratory. M2 was superior weapon system in war. Difference cost Germany not just specific battles but capacity to sustain war effort against adversary with fundamentally more effective industrial philosophy. When German engineers laughed at obsolete M2 in 1943,